Most people think peanut butter is something you buy in a jar. But the original version is much simpler than that. It is peanuts ground long enough for their own natural oils to turn into a spread. That is it. No factory trick, no complicated formula, just roasted peanuts and a few minutes of grinding. But if you turn around many familiar jars at the grocery store, including brands like Jif, the ingredient list usually tells a bigger story. You may see peanuts first, but then come other ingredients: sugar, molasses, salt, mono, and diglycerides, and fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, often from oils like rapeseed and soybean. Now, that does not mean one sandwich is going to ruin your life. That is not the point here. The real question is simpler. Why does peanut butter need extra oil when peanuts already contain so much oil of their own? That question is where the whole thing starts to make sense. Real peanut butter separates. The thick peanut solids settle lower in the jar, and the natural peanut oil rises to the top. You have probably seen this before, in a jar labeled natural. There is a shiny layer of oil sitting on top, and underneath it is a dense peanut paste that needs stirring. A lot of people see that and think, this must be old or this must be broken. But it is not broken. That separation is actually what peanut butter does when nothing is holding it in place. Peanuts are naturally rich in fat. When you grind them, the oil releases. If there are no stabilizers added, gravity slowly pulls the thicker solids downward, while the lighter oil moves upward. That is normal. The problem is normal is not always convenient. Most shoppers do not want to stir. They do not want oil on the counter. They do not want the bottom of the jar to turn dry if they forget to mix it properly. They want the first spoonful and the last spoonful to look exactly the same. So food companies solve that problem by making peanut butter that does not separate easily. They used stabilizers and solid fats to keep everything smooth, uniform, and shelf-stable for a long time. From a business point of view, that is useful. The jar looks better on the shelf. It travels better. It lasts longer. It stays creamy without any work from the customer. But from a kitchen point of view, it also changes how we think about the food. It makes the natural version look inconvenient. It makes the original version seem like the strange one. And that is what Let Dusty Explains wants to point out today. Sometimes the normal version of a food is not the original version. It is the industrial version that became familiar because it was easier to sell, ship, and store. Again, this is not about fear. It is about understanding the label. If you like commercial peanut butter, you can keep buying it. But once you know how simple the real thing is, you may start seeing that jar differently. Because homemade peanut butter is not hard. You do not need a peanut butter machine. You do not need a special kit. You do not need a long afternoon. You need peanuts, a blender or food processor, and a few minutes. Start with dry roasted peanuts. Use whatever brand makes sense for your budget. A store brand is fine. A national brand is fine. Just avoid peanuts covered in sugar, honey, glazed barbecue seasoning, or heavy flavoring. Plain roasted peanuts are the best starting point. If you want full control, use unsalted peanuts and add salt later. If salted peanuts are what you already have, use them. Just do not add more salt until you taste the final result. Now, here is one small step that improves the flavor. Warm the peanuts before blending. Spread them in a single layer on a baking sheet and place them in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. You are not trying to burn them. You are just waking up the roasted flavor and making the natural oils easier to release. When your kitchen starts to smell like fresh roasted peanuts, take them out and let them cool for a few minutes. Do not dump steaming hot peanuts straight into your blender. Too much heat and steam can affect the texture, and it can also make the blending process messier than it needs to be. Warm is good, hot and steamy is not. Now pour the peanuts into a food processor or a strong blender and turn it on. At first, it will look like nothing useful is happening. The peanuts will jump around, then break into crumbs. After a little longer, the crumbs turn into a coarse meal. Then the meal starts clumping together. This is the point where many people think they did something wrong. They think this is too dry. I need to add oil. Do not add oil yet. Keep going. The peanuts already have oil inside them. The machine just needs time to break them down enough for that oil to come out. After a few minutes, the mixture changes quickly. The dry clumps begin turning into a thick paste. Then the paste starts looking smoother, darker, and glossier. That is peanut butter beginning to happen. Not because of an additive, not because of a factory stabilizer, but because the peanuts are finally releasing what was already inside them. And that is where we will continue in part 2. Next, I will show you how long to blend it, when to add salt, how to store it, how to make it creamier, and how to turn it into a simple chocolate peanut butter, without palm oil, corn syrup, or a long ingredient list. Now the peanuts are in the machine, and they have already started changing. First crumbs, then coarse meal, then thick clumps. And if you keep going just a little longer, the peanuts begin to smooth out into a real spread. This is the stage where patience matters. Let the food processor or blender run for about 3 to 5 minutes total, depending on how strong your machine is. Stop once or twice to scrape down the sides if you need to. If the motor starts getting hot, give it a short break and continue. Do not force the machine, but also do not quit too early. Peanut butter always looks wrong before it looks right. Once the mixture becomes thick, glossy, and spreadable, add a small pinch of salt. Blend again for another 20 or 30 seconds, then taste it. That is one of the best parts of making it yourself. You decide what it needs. A little more salt. Add a tiny pinch. Want it completely plain? Leave it alone. Want it slightly sweeter? You can add a small drizzle of honey or maple syrup, but start with less than you think. Commercial peanut butter is often sweeter than people realize, and the point here is to taste the peanuts first. Now spoon the peanut butter into a clean glass jar. It may look a little looser while it is warm from blending, but it will firm up slightly as it cools. Put the lid on and store it in the refrigerator. This matters because homemade peanut butter is not built like a no-stir commercial jar. It does not have the same stabilizers. It does not have the same long shelf life formula. It is fresh food, so treat it like fresh food. Use a clean spoon every time. Keep water out of the jar. Keep the lid closed. If it ever smells bitter, stale, or unpleasant, throw it away and make a smaller batch next time. In the refrigerator, a clean homemade batch can usually last for several weeks. Some people keep it longer, but flavor is the thing to watch. Natural peanut oil can slowly oxidize over time, and when that happens, it starts tasting old. That is not the end of the world. It is just the trade-off. Now, let's make the version that usually wins over people who are used to sweeter spreads, chocolate peanut butter. Start with your finished peanut butter still in the food processor. Add 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder and 1 tablespoon of honey or maple syrup. Blend for another 30 seconds. That is it. You get a chocolate peanut spread with a short ingredient list and a deeper roasted flavor than most store-bought sweet spreads. If you want it darker, add a little more cocoa. If you want it sweeter, add a little more honey. If you want the chocolate flavor to pop, add the smallest pinch of salt, but do not overload it. The goal is not to turn it into frosting. The goal is to keep the peanut flavor and add chocolate on top of it. Dusty's rule is simple: make the basic version first, taste it, then decide if it actually needs help. Most of the time, it does not. The peanuts already brought their own oil, and this same method is not limited to peanuts. If someone in your home avoids peanuts, you can use the same basic process with sunflower seeds, almonds, cashews, or pumpkin seeds. But the principle is the same. Warm the nuts or seeds. Blend long enough for their natural oils to release. Add salt only after you can taste the base. Store it properly. That is the method. And once you understand that method, the grocery shelf looks different. You start noticing how many simple foods became expensive because somebody made them smoother, sweeter, more stable, and easier to sell. Again, this does not mean you can never buy peanut butter. Life gets busy. Convenience has its place. But now it is a choice. You know that peanut butter is not something only a factory can make. Your kitchen can make it. Thanks for watching Let Dusty Explains. If this helped you, look at an ordinary jar in a different way. Subscribe to the channel. Around here, we take everyday things from the kitchen, garden, and home and explain what is really happening underneath the label.